Priti Patel, the German Chancellor Friedrich Merz says that the rules-based international order has collapsed. Marco Rubio, the American Secretary of State, on the other hand, says that the old relationships are still intact. Who's right?
Well, look, here at the Munich Security Conference, we've heard a lot of strong views in terms of the political situation, geopolitical situation that we all find ourselves in. They are both right in many of the points that they've made. And the fact of the matter is, Trevor, you and I have discussed this before, the old world, the world that we know post-Cold War is dead. It's long gone. And we have to deal with the reality of the world in which we find it. And on that basis alone, that means all of us, whether we're working through our key partnerships such as NATO, the transatlantic partnership, or with our European colleagues, we have to really step up and learn to really be strong and grip some of the major issues that are testing and challenging all our countries, and really find pragmatic solutions to deal with these big threats and these big challenges to our democratic values, our freedoms, and also to the territorial sovereignty and integrity of many of our nation states.
It's interesting, you said that the old world is dead, and there are different views about who was holding the knife. Some people will say that it's Putin, but others, including, for example, Mark Carney of Canada, and definitely Friedrich Merz, saying that actually it's Donald Trump.
Well, look, the reality is that certainly from our perspective, we face major challenges on the axis of authoritarianism. That is Russia, China, North Korea and Iran. We can see that self-evidently in Russia's illegal war in Ukraine. That's a threat to our country. Russia is a threat to our country. We know that. We've experienced this over the last decade with state-sponsored poisonings, with all the permissive activity that has taken place in our own country. So we absolutely do work with America. America is a natural ally, it's a partner. Look at what America has done in terms of getting NATO countries to step up when it comes to more in the deterrence front, funding NATO, actually taking on more responsibility when it comes to our security and the funding and intelligence and security partnerships and cooperation. That's welcome, and certainly from our perspective, we would stand by that. And when it comes to the real threats and the challenges to Britain and to many of our allies, I would argue that it sits firmly with the axis of authoritarianism.
Well, you say that we've got to take more responsibility, but we're essentially locked into the Americans. Our warships need American supply ships. Our submarines have got to go to the United States to pick up missiles if they're going to reload. The truth of the matter is that we are still completely and wholly dependent on the Americans. And I wonder if you believe, after all you've heard, that they are still a reliable ally.
Well, I would answer that, Trevor, very directly and say, yes, they are. Not only are they our reliable ally, they are our strategic partner and a long-term ally of the United Kingdom.
You completely trust Donald Trump to deliver on his word?
I do not subscribe, Trevor, to those voices, and they're in the minority, actually, that want to create further division. This is a time for stronger unity. We should be concentrating on who the real threat and the enemy is to freedom, democracy, our democratic values, our Western values. And quite frankly, we need
how
to
does that square with Donald Trump's desire to annex Greenland?
Well, look, I mean, we have discussed this previously. Any discussion around annexing Greenland is completely wrong, and that is not right, and he was proposing that by force. I've been in many forums here at the Munich Security Conference, including with the Prime Minister of Denmark and representatives from Greenland and other key countries and allies, where we all spoke with one voice, and this is the point. We cannot be divisive at a time when we all need to be working together. This isn't about one country in the Western alliance that has greater prominence. We we all have different equities and we all have different contributions to make. We can no longer keep on reinventing the wheel. We have to put our money where our mouth is. At this particular moment in time, when it comes to defence and security, we need hard cash, we need greater cooperation and collaboration. And quite frankly, that's what I and my party are pushing the British government to do much more on. And I think the biggest message coming out of the Munich Security Conference is not just about the keynote speeches. It's effectively about being practical and pragmatic and how we work together to deliver on our collective security. And I say that, we are a leading country in NATO. We've contributed to our shared security, peace through strength for so long, and we fundamentally believe in that. And Britain has a role to play to continue to defend that and work towards that.
Let's talk about something that's happening here at home. Was the High Court right to throw out the proscription of Palestine Action?
Well, look, I'm pretty appalled by that ruling, and clearly it's now going to be subject to a legal appeal, and I think it's right that it should be appealed. It really is right. What I find so extraordinary is that the individuals involved in Palestine Action, they have been causing millions upon millions of pounds of criminal damage to military equipment, to public equipment, to public places. And the High Court took that
They spray-painted a plane.
So it's got to be challenged. Pardon?
They spray-painted a plane and some elderly ladies held up some placards. Really?
Well, actually, yes, really, Trevor, because we also know that over many years, they have been breaking into defence facilities, into defence companies. They've been scaling their buildings and breaking in through the roofs. They've been causing criminal damage. There's plenty of evidence out there. And I think it is absolutely right. The public would expect, quite frankly, to the laws of our land to be upheld. Those that are involved in criminal damage, particularly against military equipments and, public places and even private businesses, that prosecution should take place.
Do you think, so you're supporting the Home Secretary in following this up, but the sort of things that you've been talking about, for example, breaking and entering, I mean, it's criminal, but is it terrorism?
Well, look, first of all, they've got a history. This organisation has a long history. This isn't just a recent, in the last 6 months or the last 12 months. This prescription is not just based upon their recent activity. It is based upon the way in which they organise themselves, the way in which they plan their attacks. And it is right that they feel the full force of our laws, including the prescription that has been put in place. They are on par with, how terrorist organisations conduct themselves and they plan their attacks. So what I would say, this is subject now to further legal action. I think that is right that that there is an appeal that is going to take place. We absolutely support that. But I think the public would be absolutely horrified to see that these individuals have been able to essentially get away with the type of activity that they have been able to thus far.
Can I just come back to Mr. Rubio's speech yesterday, and an area that you were once in charge of? Marco Rubio criticised the Europeans for their failures on mass migration. And he said that migration threatens the cohesion of our societies, the continuity of our cultures, and he referred specifically to Christian culture, and the future of our people. Do you agree?
Well, look, first of all, you know where we stand on migration issues, and you know where I stand as well through particularly illegal migrations and many of the policies that I've been a strong advocate for. You know what I think is telling? I think it's really telling that, again, this is raised here at the Security Conference, because migration, when it's not kept in check, is a threat to our nation states. And we've seen that. I mean, we've seen homegrown terrorism. We've seen all sorts of activities in the past in our country. We still see these issues. We now see them across Europe. And I have to say, Trevor, when I was Home Secretary, certainly on the illegal migration front, I was speaking about this very vocally to many of our European allies that were simply not prepared to take action. And now it's a really big threat and an issue to them, and they're all having to wake up and deal with these issues. And I've had conversations even in Munich with the German minister, the deputy minister for Interior, about some of these very, very big and significant challenges that they and other European countries are facing.
Priti Patel, Shadow Foreign Secretary, thank you very much for your time this morning.
Thank you.